Tankersley Davis. I am an adjunct professor here at the Global Center for Women and Children. I am also a vice president at Crittenton Services for Children and Families. And I have so far had just the most amazing morning connecting with many of you, but also learning from many of you. So thank you for that. I hope you are quite excited for our labor trafficking, the threat to working minors. I hope that those in this room who work in this field are really keeping up with this. There's a lot of things going on. How many people are keeping up with what's happening with labor trafficking with minors? How many of you know there are some states who are working to change the laws for children working? Would you like a 16-year-old serving you alcohol? Just saying. 18-year-old? I don't think so. But anyway, we're going to learn even more today. We have 3 experts in this field who are absolutely amazing. So please get your questions ready. We're ready on Slido when you are. So I would like to do an introduction of our panelists. First, we have Ryann. She is a deputy in charge. She's a big dog. She works for the DA's office. She's a deputy in charge for the Labor and Economic Justice Unit's Consumer Protection Division for LA County District Attorney's Office. She is recognized as an expert in the prosecution of labor exploitation and criminal fraud exploitation of vulnerable communities. She also leads several statewide and nationwide working groups and task force operating in these areas of expertise. She has extensive speaking knowledge and consulting experience in the areas of human trafficking and labor trafficking, collaborative justice prosecution, and the business of modeling human trafficking. I really hope you guys take in what she has to say, because in my mind, labor trafficking can be harder to prosecute, gather information on this sex trafficking. It's not the topic that's, for lack of a better word, really appealing to people. They kind of don't think about it so much, so please take this in. Join me in welcoming Ryann Jorban.
Welcoming, washing Ryann all over. How am I controlling my PowerPoint? Am I just going, please change the slide? I'm good at that. All right. Please change the slide. My name is Ryann Gerber. I'm a Deputy District Attorney with LA County. I've been one for 27 years. That is not my slide. That is Paul's slide. Maybe? I don't know. Is that your slide, Paul?
That's my slide.
You want to go first? I think we're in that order, dude. I think you're going to have to go first. Paul and I train a lot together. So I would like to introduce Paul Chang from the Department of Labor.
Okay, I'm back. We want to introduce Paul Chang, but a little information about Mr. Chang. He serves as the Regional Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator at the U.S. Department of Labor, Wage and Hour Division. In his 25 plus years with the agency, he has worked on some of the most celebrated cases of labor trafficking as an investigator and assistant district director, including, which many of us already remember, the El Monte Thai slavery case in 1995. He developed numerous training materials and programs, including the enterprise model that focuses on strategic approaches to prosecution, protection, and prevention of forced labor, as well as certification program to help the garment industry avoid sweatshops in their supply chains. He has been on special assignment to the White House Initiative on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders since 2013, where he currently serves as the national co-chair for that regional network. He's an adjunct professor at the wonderful Cal State LA. Just now I graduated from their undergrad. It's a beautiful university. And Vanguard University, another exceptional university. Just saying, because I work here too. Paul received his BA and MPA from Cal State LA and is pursuing his PhD at Claremont Graduate University. He is the recipient of numerous community honors, including the 2019 Global Center for Women and Justice Diamond Award for his work in human trafficking. He's received dozens of accolades and achievements, including Secretary's Exceptional Achievement Award and Regional Administrators Award. He has also helped win the Ford Foundation's Innovation in Government Award for helping find ways to eliminate sweatshops in the garment industry. Join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Chang.
Hey everyone, let's go with the next slide. Okay, this is mine. All right. Okay, so this is we changed the model name heard me speak, I used to call this the enterprise model. When we used the enterprise model, it was because we thought it was more of a direct one horizontal, or I guess a vertically integrated model. Like, let's say there's a entire supply chain. But right now, we're calling this now the ecosystem model. Why is that? Well, in an ecosystem, we have to look at this this system. We're looking at. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we made some few changes here and there with this model, and we tweaked it. And this is, when I first brought this to Dr. Morgan's attention and Derek's attention, it was very different. And Dr. Morgan suggested we call it the enterprise model, and we did for a very long time. But I think right now, as we looked at some of the things that have been occurring, I think a more appropriate term would be an ecosystem, because we're looking at an entire ecosystem. How many of you guys think that the massage parlors we see here in Orange County might be related to the same trafficking network that operated the Myanmar trafficking case out, by Thailand, by Myanmar that just got rescued? They're the same system, right? So, and these were the same people sometimes that are involved in this global enterprise, not just an enterprise, but an entire ecosystem. It's too big. It's not just one or two players. We're looking at a very complex system that's at play here. When we created this thing, we look at what we do. It's about clustering. We're trying to identify certain patterns and clusters that really a lot of these trafficking systems share, whether it be labor or sex, and whether it be of minors or of adults. They share very common patterns. Now, we saw the ecosystem model, that I keep calling it the enterprise model, because it's hard to get that off my idea, because the ecosystem right now is 3 stages. The first stage is the recruitment stage. The recruitment stage is very similar, no matter where it is. It's vulnerability. It always starts with vulnerability, right? We hear what we heard this morning, vulnerability. It doesn't matter whether it's domestic, regional, or international, or global. Or this is something that is very important. We have to think. We have to look at what are the vulnerability. Because we know where the vulnerabilities are. Now, who takes advantage of those vulnerabilities? It's those that needs money, right? They need money right away. What are some of the common mechanisms that people often go to get money to live? If they can't make enough money, they're going to go to loan sharks, right? In third world, there's microlending. At first, it sounds all, you may read about these money microlending initiatives. Sounds great. Well, guess what? They're not that great. They start losing their property, and they start losing greater and greater in debt. Now, they need a job. They still need to survive, right? They need to bring that system in place so that they can have a system to survive. And then, where do they go? They first may go locally to find a job. In that, they look for a job recruiter locally. Then they may go regionally. Sometimes, most of the time, they don't even, when they're first trafficked, they didn't even leave the border. They might be even in the next city over. But there's a common thread here, common nexus, and that's movement. They move away, regardless of it's labor or sex. You see them. There's a movement involved. Now, when they are moving, they go back and forth. after they get employed, they can be either employed in a construction site in their local area, or they may go to a regional call center and get trafficked in Myanmar. They go back. They might go, one of the folks that I helped here in the United States went back to China and had to look for a job in Israel, and he was filming the missiles flying overhead last year. So this is what you'll see happen with these migrant workers, and there's always a common financial nexus that links all three together. So they're reliant on basically the same system. Systems are usually travel agencies, employment agencies, and others that enables this to occur. Yes, government. Yes, NGOs. Yes, a lot of modes of transportation are involved. Here in Southern California, we identified a place called Fatty Things Plaza. This is a place where is responsible for probably more than half, I would say 70% of all the cases of illicit massage or cannabis trafficking cases in the country. What enables that system to occur? If you go to Fatty Things Plaza, it's off of Garfield and Garvey, off of Monterey Park. You'll see in that San Gabriel Valley area, there's over 1,000 of these boarding homes. It enables this occurrence to happen in the first place. This is an ecosystem that enables, because we have a need for workers and workers that need a job. To get the people between that, if we make it difficult from the person that needs a job to the person that needs work, anything in between, now we create the opportunity for this trafficking enterprise or ecosystem to occur. These are what we consider vulnerabilities. Now people have a market for the vulnerabilities to drive it home. So I'm gonna go on to the next slide, please. The next slide is, okay, you all heard of the unaccompanied migrant children and working in meat processing plants. That it was all over the news the past couple of years. Let's go next slide, please. This is a few years even before that. Before that, this was the Ohio Trillium Egg Ranch case. Same issue. Every time there's outrage, but this is every few years you're going to hear things like this. Outrage. Kids working in meat processing. Kids being trafficked in the egg industry or poultry industry. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna look at this. This is the map. Is there a way you can pull the in and out, zoom in and out of the map? Okay, great, fantastic. So you saw that. That was the first one. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Let's zoom in, please. Zoom in. You can zoom in more. Okay, and then let's look at Orange County. Okay, let's go into Southern California. Now zoom in Southern California. Okay, now move to, let's say, LA and Orange County. See the clustering? Okay, so what you see in this map are the sponsors of unaccompanied migrant children. This is all public information. It's all, you can download this. I have the website, and I think I can share it with Sandy, and Sandy will put that on. So if you look at this is for the entire country. This is the unaccompanied migrant children for the entire country. Now, what do you see here? There's patterns, right? There's clustering effects, right? Click one of those. Zoom in a little closer. You see the darker images? Now go in. Okay. Move to the one of the blue one or the black. Go on the black one. Yeah. Okay. Click that. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, that's 9011. Click. Okay, so you click that, you will see the number of kids being sponsored for that particular zip code. Okay, now imagine what you have with this tool. Now, go to the other map, please. Maximize it, and then go into markers. You see, go up a little bit. Go up. Okay, you see markers on the upper right hand. You see markers. Click that. Okay, now go zoom in on the map. You see all these dots. Those are. Okay, let's go into that same place that we saw the 9011. Let's go up. It's by Vernon. You see the biggest cluster? Yeah, that place. That's really clustered. Okay, that is, you see a correlation between unaccompanied migrant children and meat processing plants? Now you can zoom out and you can see that for the entire country. So this is what I mean by that enterprise model, sorry guys, it's the ecosystem model. The ecosystem model now brings that into perspective. We work in a system that we have to identify what are the pressure points that enables these economic systems to occur in the first place. We need to find preventative ways to address these systems. By the way, this is all public information. So this is based on a public available database. The unaccompanied migrant children data set is from the New York Times, on a Freedom of Information Act request. The one on the left-hand side, it's the USDA website. It's all data set from the USDA. I just ran the codes in R to put it on a map and show how the correlation, now you can see the correlation between meat processing and unaccompanied migrant children. Now, that's only meat processing. I'm just saying, now if you had your information, let's say Ruthie has this information in her school district, and let's say, what do we need to do in terms of who do we do our outreach to? Now you have the information for that particular school district. This tool is meant for you as a practitioner to help you address some of the vulnerabilities. It's not a law enforcement issue by itself. It's not going to be, okay, I'm going to start wrapping it up, but as you can see, this is a lot of information that's now available to you, and I'm going to pass this to my partner in crime.
Not his crimes. Very clear.
Okay, you can prosecute yourself.
So I've used Paul's work as a place to understand what the problem looks like. Bless you. See, they trust me to do my own slides here. Paul's information gives us an idea of what we're looking at, right? What is the ecosystem? What is the structure? Now, the best things about knowing about structures is then understanding how to dismantle them. We cannot disrupt, we cannot dismantle, we cannot break something, unless you're a toddler or my 16-year-old, without knowing how it works, right? We are going to be much more successful when we know how something works and then we go ahead and attempt to attack it. But let's talk why we care. How many of you are here because you are interested in sex trafficking, please be honest, it's okay. That sex trafficking is what brought you into this room. How many of you are here because child sexual abuse brought you into this room? How many of you are here because you're worried about what is happening to children and adults with sexual violence, sexual overexposure, the sexualization of much of what we are dealing with in our world today? Okay. I have 27 years as a district attorney. I started at 3. And most of that time I did what we call vulnerable victims. If you watch Law and Order SVU, and I know these 2 tables of criminal justice people watch SVU, you will know what I did, okay? Those are literally the cases I did. By the way, all the rest of it's made up, but those are really cases that I tried. And so I worked with survivors of sexual and domestic violence. That was why I joined the office. That's why I became a DA. I had been a teacher before that, so the babies were my heart, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna do that. And so I also was in the room because of that kind of violence. And then 8 years ago, they said, so we kind of want you to start looking at vulnerable victims, but ones that are defrauded, ones that are stolen from, ones whose vulnerabilities make them victims of fraudulent crime. And then 4 years ago, as I sat by a river in Idaho as we traveled across the western states, because it was COVID and why not, they said, oh, and by the way, you're gonna start doing wage theft too. And I was like, cool, what does that mean? And they said, yeah, we don't know. That's why you're gonna do it. Figure it out. Okay, cool. So then I met Paul and he taught me everything I know. So anything I get wrong is his fault, is really how that comes down. So what I realized is we get focused on these cases of violence because that's what we see in the press. There is no law and order wage theft, okay? It would not do well, okay? There's no NCIS labor stats, right? Like, it just doesn't exist. But why should we care? Well, first of all, we should care because we are talking about modern slavery. 28 million people by the International Labor Organization are in modern slavery. Of those, 2/3 are in commercial non-sex work. So when we focus on sexual labor trafficking, we are forgetting 17 million people. I'm not willing to do that. I am the ultimate underdog kind of girl. 3.3 million children are being trafficked for labor, both sex work and other work. Why do I say it that way? Because work in this field is work. If you are being abused to work, whether it is sex work, you're being paid, people are paid to have sex with you, or you are scrubbing floors and taking care of children 24 hours a day without being allowed to leave the house, a case we had, it's not really much difference as far as the work goes. $2.236 billion a year in illegal profits every year from forced labor. And I want to give you another statistic. Here in LA, up there in LA, where am I? I was in DC until 36 hours ago. In LA County, we have $3 billion with a B dollars in lost wages a year just from wage theft. Wage theft is the largest financial crime in the world, hands down. I want you to think about that $3 billion with a B a year in LA County. If you're not getting paid $3 billion in wages, that means $3 billion in wages is not being taxed. It means it's not going into the unemployment system. It means that your government, your school, your roads are not being paid for by that work. And that work instead is being pocketed by the owner of the business. And if you're running a business and you're trying to do it legitimately, you're now paying the illegitimate businesses costs too. So when I say this matters, I mean this matters. This is what is making or breaking us as a community. When we talk about how to prosecute or destroy these systems, this ecosystem, we have to understand where our victims are coming from. Paul talked about vulnerability. It all starts, begins, and ends with vulnerability. If they are vulnerable, you are not going to get an end. So we must understand where they are and work at getting that vulnerability gone. There will be a test on this. So, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't know where you're sleeping that night, please don't ask me to help you prosecute a labor trafficker. Okay? I'm just not going to be there right now because I need to know where I'm going to sleep that night. If I know where I can sleep, if I know that I'm safe, if I know I have a job, if I know that my family is safe, my kids are safe, now I can start thinking about helping destroy the ecosystem that is causing modern slavery. The only way that we do this work correctly is if we collaborate. So when we work together, so I am law enforcement, Paul is administrative, Andre's press. Do I have any social workers in the room, perhaps? Any teachers in the room? Thank you. Service providers. I got Sherry in the back who does victim services. We all have to work together because if we can't stabilize our victims, we can't do a case. All right? So when we're working together, we need to have the same, not the same purpose, but the same goal. If you are a service provider, it is not your job to feed me as law enforcement your victim. It is, however, my job to make a relationship with you and your job to make a relationship with me so that we can help stabilize that victim and start to destroy the ecosystem. How many of you have heard the victim-centered approach, right? We have barriers to victim-centered approach. We have to have language and cultural knowledge. We have to overcome government mistrust, and we have to if they're not here legally, or even if they are born here, I'm gonna guess that except for TV, most of you don't know your legal rights, okay? You have to build these relationships ahead of time. That's why conferences like these are key. Because Paul will answer my call at 3 a.m. In fact, Paul has. I got a phone call from a woman that I met on a Disney cruise. She was my server. During COVID, she came here to the United States to work in hotels as a cleaner to feed her child, right? Maslow's triangle. She was trafficked in Reno. She was being forced to work. She was being forced to force others to work. And they were outside her house screaming that they were going to kill her because she had tried to help some people who weren't getting paid. It was not 3 a.m. But it was 3 p.m. on Memorial Day, so it was a holiday. And I called Paul. And Paul answered, and within about 4 hours we had HSI, Reno PD. Paul found a way for her to protect her visa because that was their biggest threat against her. And we stabilized her, and she's now a white coat, which means she's management on a Disney cruise, and I'm going to see her in 3 weeks, and I cannot wait. Huh? Yes, he called Disney. I love that. But he had a relationship. I had a relationship with Paul. Paul knew me. I knew Paul. I did the work ahead of time. What I didn't do is at 3 a.m. when I'm trying to do the work, make the phone call then. You have to do the work. You have to build the relationships. So, let's say we've done all of that. Okay, great, Ryan, now we have a human trafficking case. No, probably not. You're probably not going to get a human trafficking case. I've been trying cases for 27 years. I've had one sex trafficking case. Okay, why? Well, there's all kinds of reasons why. But the problem, I don't agree with you that it victimizes the victims. To do human trafficking, victims are, we're not prosecuting victims, we're prosecuting their traffickers. But I am not going to put the weight of a prosecution on a victim who is not ready for that weight. That is not their job. It is my job. It is our job, collectively, to bring justice. It is not their job to find their own justice. It is their job to be strong enough to rescue them, allow themselves to rescue themselves, but it's not their job to carry the lift of a case. So what do? Do we just walk away? And my answer is no. I am a big believer in what I call the B student theory. My friend and I argue that B students run the world. You're not listening to this. As a mom of a soon college student, A students run the world. B students run the world. C students run B students, okay? Yeah, Paul was on academic probation because he was bored. You're not who I'm talking about here. Thank you. When we find that perfect is our goal, we will fall. What we have to do is start with what we have and work up to what we want. So if we have these cases, and I can disrupt these ecosystems by charging you with not having an itemized paycheck for the woman that you've been sex trafficking in your illicit massage business, or sending the out calls in a hotel. Bet you didn't give her a paycheck. Bet you didn't pay unemployment taxes. Bet you didn't pay for, your own taxes. Workman's comp. How many, pimps get workman's comp for the women they're trafficking? Even going farther, we have businesses, right? We are right now prosecuting a restaurant and hotel owner on Catalina Island. Wage theft, conspiracy to commit wage theft, brand theft. She was working her people up to 80 hours a week at minimum wage. Okay? So we're looking at tax fraud for her, because guess what? She wasn't claiming that. She wasn't paying their unemployment taxes. And then we get to things like criminal threats, witness intimidation. What this allows us to do is take the bad guy out of play while our victim is getting stabilized, and we may, once we do that, be able to work our way up to a trafficking case. But we start with what we have, not with what we want. It is called, what's that marshmallow test where you give a toddler 2 marshmallows, you say if you don't eat them, you can have 2 more later? Wait for the 2 more, please. Don't eat the 2 you have in front of you. So this is a quote that I love. It was from a DA investigator who does my work up there. And that's really what we're talking about here. When we talk about sex crimes, we have SVU, not SUV, that's what I drive, in our heads. And it's, excuse the pun, it's sexy, it's interesting, it's juicy. But what we're really talking about are humans. And whatever the work that they're doing, they deserve the dignity and the respect to be treated like what they are doing, what is happening to them counts. So thank you for being here, and thank you for telling them it counts.
Thank you. That was really amazing. I wish I knew you about 18 years ago. I would have had a juicy case for you. And I didn't know what to do. So this is why this is important. I work in human services, and I had a man who rode his bike to so close. Let's say from here to Fullerton every day. And he would be super stressed because he had to get there before 6 a.m. or he would be locked out. And he couldn't go to the bathroom because inevitably he got paid per piece. And we'd meet him every week. I'd say, "What's your good news?" And he'd go, "Oh, I made $11 today." And he would have worked from 6 or 5 a.m. to probably 6 p.m. And we didn't know what that was or what to do. This is why you sitting in this room is important. So thank you. He was just happy to get $11 to try to feed his family. So I'm excited to introduce Mr. Andre Mouchard. He is with the Orange County Register. He's Assistant Managing Editor. That's a very fancy title. I love that. And I'd love you to read his bio just because it's fun, so I'm going to read it directly. It's hardly the only job I've had at the OC Register. As a reporter, I wrote for our business section and later for our feature section, then known as Accent. This led to a couple thousand stories about everything from the surf industry, real estate, to special investigations about September 11th. and local toll road construction and the death penalty. As an editor, I've overseen teams in charge of investigations, features on the front page. Lastly, as the industry shrunk, meaning fewer reporters in newsrooms around the country, I've switched roles yet again, becoming a hybrid writer and editor. This has been stories about pretty much anything I want, including the effects of the pandemic, the aging population, and human trafficking. He lives in the lovely city of Irvine with his wife, mother-in-law, and I love this, a rotating cast of adult children and their significant others. Join me in welcoming Andre.
Yeah, that kind of covers the whole thing, I think. All right, so these guys have been talking about big picture, right? They've been talking about the ecosystem. We've been talking about the network of, the big numbers related to wage theft and that kind of thing. My job as a reporter and editor is to ignore a lot of that and focus on humans, right? Because I'm in the storytelling business. Stories are great. I don't have a PowerPoint to back that up, but trust me, they are. But the concept that, you start with a person, right? So, and I've got to be honest with you, I do not come to this as an advocate. I come to this as a journalist, right? It happens that trafficking is an incredibly powerful story. It talks a lot about humanity, but it also talks about, I think, the current moment to a certain extent. I think that trafficking is, sex trafficking and labor trafficking ultimately are about people filling needs and people exploiting that need. And because of that, I think Shakespeare would have written about that, right? This is a common theme. And because of that, you look at this and it's, I don't mean to say exciting as in, oh boy, it's great, like I'm happy about it, but it's a really rich world to learn about and to write about. It happens, I would say a little bit more than a year ago. We had seen the stories in the New York Times from, I want to say, 18 months ago, that had a lot of the network that you were talking about, where people were coming over, unaccompanied minors were winding up working in, poultry and meat packing plants and that kind of thing. We also had I'd edited some stories where some of that was local, okay? So, because I'm an editor there, I get to choose, and so I said, I think I'm gonna write about this instead of editing about it. So I wanted to kind of dive in and find out, how that works locally. I gotta be honest with you, I did not find anybody locally who was working in a meatpacking plant that I could write about. Instead, what I found was a kid, I say kid, he's about 17. He was 15 when I was talking to him, who was waiting outside of a Home Depot a little bit before the sun was coming up, doing his homework. I get to talking to this kid, and he was pretty excited about his homework. It was a little over my head. It was some math stuff. There's a reason, I think we were talking about the B and the C students. Somewhere below there, you become the reporters and the editors. But anyway, but the upshot was he was this incredibly bright, enthusiastic person, okay, who was, while he was doing his homework, he was getting ready for work. And in this case, that was going to be he was hoping to catch on with a crew that was going to be doing somebody's backyard. He was going to be digging helping to dig a hole for somebody's pool, right? And I'm not sure of all the detail there. But the upshot was, his homework, which he was doing, he wasn't sure if he was going to turn it in. Yeah, he was telling me, yeah, I hope to be able to catch a ride back to school, and, turn this in. But if I don't, basically his life centered on work. Now, he had come over, I want to say in late 20, early 21, I think. And if you kind of looked at our economy at that point, we were going through that rise and fall that we all saw during COVID. Huge layoffs roughly in the middle of 20, and then a hiring boom that was going on for about 18 months there in the United States. That didn't necessarily generate a lot of it generated a lot of interest for people here, but it also generated a lot of interest around the world, right? That's one of the reasons we have this migrant crisis. Well, he was part of the wave of people who came here. He came by himself. I think he was 12 when he came by himself. He was hooking up with, I think, an uncle, if I recall, and he lived with the uncle for maybe 6 months, and then since then has been living in homes in Santa Ana and actually out in Corona, in apartments with 15 people, and working as much as possible because his family, as he put it, he says, when I get paid, they eat, right? And so there's a couple of different crises that are going on here. One of which is his inability to turn in his homework, which was sad for him, but his family, we talked about the hierarchy of needs, he was kind of taking that in a more, less academic way. He needed to send money back home. The thing about him is he would never have seen himself as a victim, okay? And I believe he is, but I wouldn't presume to tell somebody how they should feel in print. So, I described him in every way that I've just described him to you people in the story. But, I think it's pretty clear, among other things, he's underage, so everybody who hired him was committing a crime. But he wouldn't have seen it that way, I think. And he was, a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, but he's very prideful about what he had done. He'd seen himself as accomplishing something. And that made the story, I think, that more interesting to me. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys is that this story, by the way, it came out, again, maybe a year ago, I think, this month. And it generated a lot of interest. There were a lot of people the Register is a paper here in the county and has a lot of readers who aren't crazy about that kid, or at least his story, and they let me know it, which I found sort of odd. I also found a lot of people who called and said they were thrilled about him. I don't mean to say that everybody was anti-immigrant in that, my responses, but it was interesting to me that people would look at somebody who I think is kind of a hero, and found something to criticize. But the upshot is that the story itself had, it caught a lot of eyes, and it raised an attention to this issue. You were mentioning that, most, and you guys all pointed out that, most of you were here for reasons other than labor trafficking. Labor trafficking is clearly a huge issue. The ecosystem, I hate to say it, but look at your shoes. What kind of shirt are you wearing? How much did you pay for that? What kind of car did you drive? Let's look at our phone. I just had some chicken. The fact is the ecosystem that we're talking about, actually, we're all part of it, right? And I'm not saying that we should all, wear the hair shirt and feel sad about that because there's nothing we can do, but in an instant. But we should be aware that, the issue that we're talking about is not, it's not academic, right? There are, millions of people around the world who are working for people who are making somebody a lot of money. When we buy a watermelon for $5 in the middle of winter, that didn't happen because everybody involved was making a living wage, right? So, there's a lot that goes into this, but anyway, all I'm trying to tell you is that the story itself, stories about this kind of thing, are powerful and they matter. And I guess I can just encourage you to tell them to me, actually. That's what I want to tell you. But anyway, so that's, again, I don't have a lot going on. I probably should have spoken more slowly, and that way I could have used my 15 minutes, but the upshot is that's my tale. So.
Thank you. I think you had a lot to say. That was an awesome story because that brings it home. How many of us have gone to a store and you see people? Do you pay attention? Or do you keep going? Do you look at, I wonder how old that person might be? Or if they're writing, are they doing homework? Maybe now we can be more aware. I don't see any questions coming through, but I would love for you to have questions. No, Dr. Morgan's very fancy. She's very fancy. Yes, I can. Dr. Morgan is so fancy. Hi, Dr. Morgan 2.0. All right. Oh, we do have some questions. Is Shein really using child labor? Yes.
No comment.
So yes, it is. When we're talking about that ecosystem, we are talking about labor inside and outside the United States. And fast fashion is a major user of, if not trafficked individuals, then definitely wage and labor exploited individuals.
Okay, I think I can. Okay, can I? So I'm gonna give you a little bit more background on Shein. So Shein is a retailer, an online retailer. So in the garment industry, there's a pyramid. You got the retailers on top, the manufacturers in the middle, and the contractors in the bottom. But the contractors and the workers are all in the bottom half. The retailer sets the price. The pricing, whoever sets prices, control working conditions. So to answer your question, I'm going to pose another question. Whoever sets the price controls the working conditions throughout their supply chain. Think of who sets the price. There's actually no. When we talk about contracts, if you're in law school, contracts 101. Okay, we're not going to worry about it. But there's offer, acceptance, and consideration, right? But what if one party has all the control and one party does not have any control? It's a take it or leave it kind of operation. Do we have a valid contract? No, we don't. So in essence, what we have is really a entity that operates as a subpart of Shein. So in California, we just have passed the Garment Worker Protection Act, and that was a law that puts retailers, manufacturers, and the supply chain responsible for all of the back wages liabilities that the contractors do, and also outlaws piece rate. So now your friend doing piece rate can no longer be paid piece rate. They have to be paid by the statutory hourly rate.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, I have a question for you, Andre. They wanted to know what happened to that team. Was he assisted?
What I tried to reach back to him. He had, oddly, the thing that he could afford was a cell phone and some kind of cell plan. I don't know exactly how he pulled that off, but I did call him later and talked to him a couple times because people offered to help him. There was one woman that was insisting I need to, somehow figure out a way to adopt this kid. After talking with her for a bit, I think we did him a solid there by not connecting. But the upshot being last I heard, he was still doing what he was doing. He stopped either answering my phone or his phone was disconnected, but I don't know. It's bottom line.
How come labor trafficking is not a mandated report in California?
Let me ask you, how many of you work for a wage? Okay. How many of you know what qualifies as labor trafficking? Yeah, so the reason it's not mandated reporting is because, so it's very interesting. I often say this as a slightly rounded individual, that it's a lot easier to quit smoking than it is to stop eating, because you have to eat to live. You have to work to live. And so labor trafficking is not as clean cut or obvious as something like sex trafficking. As much as I want labor trafficking to be stopped, if you start mandating the reporting of it, you are going to start really making it difficult for mandated reporters to do the right thing. And so I would much rather that we not mandate behavior in that way, but we instead educate so that people know it when they see it or suspect it when they see it.
Thank you. Next question. Should you trust or do you research before booking a massage?
You will know if it is an illicit massage business. How will you know? First of all, you will see only men coming in and out, especially at odd hours. How many of you go get your massage at 11 o'clock at night? You will not be, especially if you're female, you will not be welcomed. They will come in and they will say they do not have anyone for you that day. You can look on Yelp. There are literally indications on Yelp if it is a illicit massage business. They will talk about things that you are not used to having people talk about when you're looking up a chicken sandwich place. So those are kind of some of the aspects. I always look up reviews anyway, because I'm not going to go to some place that's 3 stars. I mean, come on. So, the information you find on the internet will help you narrow that. But having said that, California is the largest center of illicit massage businesses in the United States. And as somebody at a meeting I was just out pointed out, there's more illicit massage businesses in Houston than there are Starbucks. So, understanding that, I would read the reviews.
And also, most of the illicit massage parlors in the entire United States center comes from Southern California, Monterey Park. They may work in the illicit massage business one day, and Ryan mentioned this earlier. When they come back, they're going to work at a buffet. Next, they're going to work as a nanny, and then they rotate their jobs. So it's not necessarily they're in that work all the time. So keep in mind that victimization is constantly ongoing. The law enforcement action at the site of work may disrupt at that site of work, but then they go in, maybe they're in Houston one day, next day they're going to be in Denver, the next day they're going to be in Seattle, next day they're going to be in Bakersfield. The system rotates itself.
In follow-up to that, if it's so obvious which massage places are illegal, it's a lot obvious.
It's a lot.
How do they stay open?
They open and they close. So basically, okay, so massage, so think of massage parlors. Where do they usually open?
Strip malls.
Strip malls, right? And where are they? They're not in the middle of nowhere. They're in public spaces. And where is it? It's usually very close by residential neighborhoods. Their demographics are going to be upper, they're not like if we're talking about prostitution, the clientele is different. So they stay, again, we're going into clustering again. where is the customer base? And this is again where the victimization allows this to occur.
In addition, we're talking about businesses that don't care if they stay open. So we can't really regulate them out of business the way we might regulate a business that wants to stay open. If you're a Starbucks, no offense to Starbucks, you want to keep your doors open, so you're going to follow the laws, you're going to follow the rules. If you're an illicit massage business and we shut you down because of a labor code violation, you're not going to pay that labor code violation, you're going to close your doors and you're going to open up 3 blocks away. So we have to do different things to disrupt those businesses. We can use some of the things we use to disrupt, legitimate businesses, but we have to use a panoply, that's a good word, a panoply of things to disrupt. And we don't have enough law enforcement, we do not have enough cops, we do not have enough prosecutors to prosecute our way out of this problem. We have to solve this problem from the beginning of that ecosystem, not at the end point of that ecosystem. It is a lot easier to not make your room messy than it is to clean up your room at the end.
Can I also add to that? Right now we have a project in Monterey Park at Fatty Kings Plaza to try and build a resource center at that site where the majority of the vulnerable workers are being exploited or transported to. This is the site where people get transported to all over the United States. Imagine if, let's say, a law enforcement officer in Houston or anywhere in the country shuts down one of these massage parlors. The victim will return back to Monterey Park and the victimization will restart itself. Now imagine if you had a community navigator on site that would, let's say they didn't have to report back to the law enforcement. They could take this information from law enforcement. Now, they can reach out to wherever that person lives or the last known address of that person, because it's going to be in about 1,000 boarding homes. And there's over 1,000 boarding homes in that area. Pay that boarding home a visit to bring non-threatening. Just go there, do welfare checks, give them a package, a care package. Imagine what that does. It creates trust. It builds trust. It builds. They open up. Once they open up, now they can talk to. If they're ready to talk to law enforcement again, now you have a way of really disrupting the entire system. Not just do a case and do a checkbox. You're going to be now disrupting an entire system. This is not about any political ideology. It's about taking this, think about this. This is a business. We want to put a bottleneck into this business model.
Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists. For some of the remaining questions, one of them was how do we report labor trafficking? We'll be ensure that is answered during this conference. And someone asked about helping unaccompanied minors. Please visit some of the tables and we might be able to assist you with that. Thank you so much for your time.